Let's dive right into today's explainer because we are exploring a seriously fascinating collision. We've got this beautiful sci-fi dream of infinite abundance crashing headfirst into the very harsh legal reality of artificial scarcity. Basically, our technological trajectory is setting up this massive inevitable tension between totally frictionless production, making things for free, and the strict economic rules that govern our daily lives. If you've ever wondered how the future of the economy is actually going to work when machines can make literally anything, well, you're in the right place.
What is so incredibly cool about this idea is how perfectly Star Trek captures a real, serious economic prediction made way back in the 1930s. The legendary economist John Maynard Keynes wrote about a future where humanity would finally solve what he called the economic problem. The desperate daily struggle for basic survival. So when Captain Picard casually tells a time traveler that money doesn't even exist in the 24th century, he's basically announcing to the audience that Keynes's utopian dream actually came true.
In a post-scarcity economy, like what we see in the United Federation of Planets, money is rendered totally obsolete. And why is that? Well, because technology has advanced so much that it provides infinite social wealth. Think about it. When you no longer have to fiercely compete for limited resources just to survive, the entire driving force of your society completely shifts. Instead of hoarding wealth, the focus becomes self-actualization. You work to improve yourself and to improve society as a whole.
Now, the undisputed engine of this Keynesian utopia is, of course, the replicator. This fictional machine is pretty much the ultimate endpoint of the Industrial Revolution. It literally converts energy into matter instantaneously. Need food, a new outfit, or a complex replacement part for a warp drive? You just push a button. And when you're done with an item, it breaks it down and recycles it. It completely, totally eliminates material scarcity, and it functions as a public good. Everyone has access, so nobody starves and nobody goes without.
But this incredible technology sets up two wildly diverging paths for humanity's future. On one hand, you have the Federation, totally embracing this Keynesian abundance and living in a moneyless, scientifically driven society. But then, on the other hand, you have the Ferengi. They represent a society based on extreme hyper-capitalism. Even with access to post-scarcity tech like the Replicator, the Ferengi still demand a profit. They artificially restrict access, essentially charging a fee to use a machine that could effortlessly provide for everyone.
And that brings us right out of science fiction and straight into a very real-world economic puzzle. It's an idea famously explored by Peter Frase in his book, For Futures. The big question is, if we actually build the technology to make anything cheaply and easily, we're talking advanced 3D printers, full automation, and AI, how do companies still make a buck? How do you maintain a capitalist, profit-driven market economy when the actual cost of producing physical goods drops all the way to zero?
Well, the answer to that trillion-dollar question is an economic system known as rentism. In a rentist system, the wealthy don't control the economy by owning physical factories or raw materials like they used to. Nope. Instead, they monopolize the digital patterns, the software, the intellectual property, the literal blueprints required to reproduce our world. In this setup, wealth is generated by extracting rent. You're constantly paying licensing fees just for the right to use the information that tells the machines what to build. To really wrap our heads around rentalism, we have to grasp how intellectual property is fundamentally completely different from physical property. If you own a physical cup of coffee, you have total control over that concrete object. You can drink it, you can sell it, or you can spill it on your shirt. But intellectual property, that controls the blueprint itself. It grants the owner the legal right to dictate exactly how everyone else in the entire world uses copies of that idea.
This concept isn't entirely new, though. It's actually part of a massive historical pattern. Back in medieval times, regular folks had unrestricted access to physical land, the commons, for grazing their animals or farming. But then in the 18th century, we saw the legal enclosure of that land, literally fencing off shared spaces into private property. Today, we are living through a brand new type of enclosure. We are watching the digital commons get fenced off. Information, software, and patterns are being aggressively locked down through copyright and patents, so a toll can be collected every single time that data is accessed.
So what happens if we apply this rentist logic back to the Star Trek universe? We get what Frase hilariously, but kind of terrifyingly, calls the anti-Star Trek future. Sure, you might physically own a replicator right there in your kitchen, but to actually make a cup of Earl Grey tea, you have to pay a continuous licensing fee to some copyright cartel just to download the maker codes. And if you try to hack your own replicator to get around the fee, well, you are now committing a severe federal crime over a hot beverage.
Now, I know this sounds like the plot of a dystopian sci-fi novel, but guys, this is not just theoretical. We can see the deep foundations of this exact rent-based system operating right now, today, embedded in our modern intellectual property laws. This enclosure of abundance is already happening all around us, and it's heavily present in industries you might not immediately expect.
Let's look at a concrete example right out of the agricultural sector. The Supreme Court case Bowman v. Monsanto. A farmer was literally sued for saving and replanting genetically modified soybean seeds. Now, saving seeds from this year's crop to plant next year is a practice as old as farming itself. But because Monsanto holds the patent on the genetic pattern of their Roundup Ready seeds, the court ruled that farmers cannot legally reproduce them. They are forced to buy brand new seeds every single year. Vernon Bowman was actually fined $85,000 for doing this. It's the legal system enforcing a strict cycle of artificial scarcity on a biological product that naturally reproduces itself.
And we are seeing the exact same artificial scarcity applied to heavy machinery. Traditionally, if you buy a vehicle, you own it completely. You can fix it up, modify it, or take it to your buddy's garage, whatever you want. But companies like John Deere have successfully argued that modern farmers don't actually own their tractors anymore in the traditional sense. Because the tractor requires proprietary software to run, John Deere says the farmer is merely purchasing an implied license to operate that software. If it breaks, only the manufacturer is legally allowed to fix it.
That brings us to a quote that just perfectly nails the core thesis of this entire explainer. The shift to rentism means that the physical object, all those thousands of pounds of steel and rubber, is actually secondary. The real value and the true mechanism of economic control lies entirely in the intellectual property rights restricting how you use it.
Okay, but let's throw a massive, game-changing variable into this mix. If our future economy is heavily based on owning patents and copyrights, what happens to intellectual property when human beings are no longer the ones doing the inventing? We are standing on the edge of a totally new era of automation that is going to severely stress test this entire legal framework.
Recent research highlights the rapid rise of agentic AI. We are moving so fast past the kind of AI that just acts as an assistant. We are entering the era of truly autonomous systems, AI agents that can independently execute entire complex workflows. We're talking about systems generating novel semiconductor designs or researching and writing full manuscripts from scratch, totally without human intervention. The AI is making the final creative judgments itself.
And this inevitably leads to a massive legal dilemma, which was perfectly illustrated by the Thaler v. Vidal case. In this scenario, an AI system named Dabus autonomously generated two novel inventions, a food container and a flashing beacon. But when the developers filed for patents and listed the AI as the actual inventor, the courts completely shut it down. In 2022, the U.S. Federal Circuit, along with courts in the EU and UK, firmly ruled that under current statutes, only natural, human persons can be considered inventors.
That ruling creates a truly wild void in the law. As the research points out, agentic AI is completely decoupling creativity from its traditional legal and economic moorings. Think about it. If an autonomous machine dreams up a brilliant new blueprint, but the law strictly says machines can't own property, then who actually owns the patent? It forces us to seriously question if our current intellectual property laws are even fit for purpose in an age of artificial innovators. Because if they aren't, it could upend the entire economy we rely on.
So, we find ourselves stuck in this crazy AI incentive paradox. On one hand, if we absolutely deny IP copyrights to AI outputs, commercial investment might totally dry up. I mean, why would a company pay a human team when an AI can generate uncopyrighted free material? But on the flip side, if we do adapt the law and grant copyrights to AI, we run the enormous risk of unleashing infinite patent trolls. Imagine autonomous software systems running 24/7, endlessly generating and hoarding patents for every conceivable pattern, effectively locking down our entire economy.
If we don't figure out how to adapt these frameworks thoughtfully, we are facing a genuinely perilous outcome. As the research warrants, without the right measures, we risk entering a new creative dark age. We could end up in a world where autonomous systems generate absolute cultural and material abundance, literally solving Keynes's economic problem. Yet that abundance legally belongs to nobody, while economically enriching only the massive corporate stewards who happen to own the machines.
Which brings us to the ultimate question I want to leave you with today. The technology required to end scarcity is rapidly becoming a reality. But remember, technology alone doesn't dictate how our society functions. Our laws and our choices do. So, as we build these mind-blowing machines,
Are we going to use them to create the shared, moneyless abundance of the Federation? Are we going to let rentism enclose our future behind a massive wall of artificial scarcity? The choice is entirely ours.